Hey everybody, it's your Sam and I'm here with another video. Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about flashbacks. And the reason why is because I have a few flashbacks in my trilogy, I'm No Hero. I actually have a couple of flashbacks in some of my other works that I've completed too. There have been a lot of questions that I've seen on Twitter and some questions that I've actually seen on some of my videos and that I've been asked in real life about flashbacks and the use of flashbacks and all that good stuff. What is a flashback? A flashback interrupts the chronological order of your story, and it should provide information in order to help move your plot or get the reader to know your character a little bit more, or something that is important. It reveals something important. And it takes the reader back in time to a certain event in a character's life. Now, this event, this flashback, usually revolves around the main character. Sometimes it can revolve around the villain. Sometimes it can revolve around, say, an important secondary character like a love interest. Or maybe even shows you how a character's business partner has gotten into this business or is suddenly changing his or her mind about something. The flashback should help the reader understand elements of the story or learn more about the character. It's best if it's both. And a flashback kind of makes a promise to a reader too, kind of like foreshadowing does or symbolism does. A flashback promises the reader that this is relevant to the story, that this is going to move the story, this is going to be important later. So keep that in mind whenever you put a flashback into your story. A lot of people write out the main narrative before they even think about putting a flashback into their book. This kind of allows them to realize whether or not all the information and all the character choices that are made in the main narrative are already explained in like the subtext or the character dialogue or something to that nature, whether or not they need an actual flashback or if they just need to add a few hints here and there into the main narrative and it can do the same thing. Therefore, you really need to make sure that your flashback is needed, that it's important, that it's going to actually help your story, or it's actually going to help get your reader into your book more, into your character more, make them fall in love with the character more. You don't want to bore your reader. This is basically what I'm saying. And unfortunately, one of my flashbacks in I'm No Hero Book 1, two of my beta readers said was a little long, it was a little long-winded, and it was kind of boring. Therefore, I needed to work on my pacing and I needed to work on my flashback. And I'm going to do that. That flashback is now a lot shorter and it sticks to the relevant information instead of all the filler that was in between the pieces of relevant information in that flashback. Or at least I hope it does. Flashbacks can help fill in the motive of a character. What I mean by that is it gives a reason why your character is doing a particular thing. Okay, so one example is you have a introverted main character. They do not like crowds, they do not like organizing crowds, they don't like being in front of people, they don't like being in the spotlight. But this main character of yours is suddenly organizing some kind of charity event. Maybe they're organizing a community garden. Why would they want to do that? How can you portray the reason why they want to do that? So you have a flashback. You have a flashback of that character remembering the community garden that was at her or his grandparents' place or best friend's place, and they are missing that nostalgia, or they know that the community can benefit from such a thing like the community that is in the flashback in the character's past. So you need to portray that in the flashback, and it can be just a short couple of paragraphs, it can be a couple of pages. Just keep it relevant, keep it short and sweet, don't bore your reader. And another thing that could happen too is maybe your character suffers from anxiety, and there is a trigger that happens in your main narrative that causes a panic attack. Maybe while the character is pulling out of that panic attack or pulling out of that situation or getting away from that trigger, she or he or they have a memory, they have a flashback, and the reader can read that flashback and understand why that triggered a panic attack, why that trigger is so effective, so damaging in that moment in the main narrative. Just a couple of examples. Flashbacks can also move the plot forward. If in, say, the first example, the one with the community garden, if your plot is pulling a community together that has suffered something damaging, they're rebuilding, or maybe the community is suffering from a lack of kinship, a lack of community, and they need something to kind of draw them together, to draw them, closer together so that they can be safer or just have more communication between each other, then that flashback will eventually help move that plot forward, because it gives the motive for the character to build that community garden, and it gives a speech that character can do in order to pull the community together for them to remember their past. Maybe they had a community garden as they were a child, or they remember gardening with their mom or dad, and it stirs that memories, and they're more apt to come together to create that community garden. And there's your plot. There's the moving of the plot forward. In the second example, maybe your character, the reason why you're writing this whole book is you want to show how people can live through anxiety and panic attacks and work through some of the triggers, and how to help people that have panic attacks and anxiety and working through certain triggers. That flashback gives a reason why. The reader can analyze why that trigger is so triggering, and it moves the plot forward to how that character either overcomes the trigger or learns to live with the trigger, whatever your plot may need. A couple of things that you need to kind of be a little wary of. Flashbacks interrupt your narrative. Is it a good interruption? That's a question that you have to ask yourself. Is this a good enough reason to interrupt my narrative? To pull my reader out of the present of what you're writing and into the past? Is this important? Can this information be shared in a different way that is not a flashback? If it can, maybe a flashback isn't correct for your narrative. If it can't, if a flashback will add a little bit more drama, a little bit more of the reader falling in love with your character or your words, then do the flashback. But make sure that you weigh the pros and cons. Make sure that you realize that doing a flashback does pull your reader out of the moment, pulls your reader into another moment, and then you have to insert the reader back into the first moment, your narrative. So keep that in mind. Is it worth that much work? You also have to figure out whether the flashback is actually needed in your plot. Is it entirely off base? Is it pulling entirely away from your plot, your subplot, Is it showing a side of your character that is no longer relevant to the story or to the character? Another couple of things to think about, because if that's the case, then you don't need that flashback, because it's only going to confuse your reader. It's going to muddy up your story, and your reader is going to wonder why that was needed. If your flashback moves your plot forward, makes your reader have all the feels for your characters, then yes, go for it. Pretty much, in a nutshell. And if it explains the current conflict that your character is in, yes, go for it. That's what flashbacks are for. I hope this video helps you out a little bit. I know I had to do a little bit more research on flashbacks myself in order to figure out whether or not I needed that flashback in the story, or how to kind of make it concise and make it better for the reader. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel. I post videos every Sunday and Thursday. I also do live streams every Thursday morning at 9 AM Eastern Standard Time. Make sure to like this video. I really appreciate it. It helps me feel all warm and cozy and fuzzy inside. And make sure to comment. Do you like flashbacks, or do you hate them? Let me know in the comments below. Again, thank you for watching. Stay safe. Be kind to one another out there. Keep writing. Keep being creative. And I will see you next time.